Hello, I'm Dan West with the Livonia Chamber of Commerce, and this is our latest cyber edition of CityScape, our regular series of video chats about people, places, and ideas about Livonia. Realizing the COVID-19 crisis is creating a lot of stress and anxiety for people, we invited Matt Swartz, a licensed master social worker and director at PCS-Counseling in Northville. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Matt, can you share with us some ways to manage our emotions as we deal with a pretty remarkable time for many of us professionally and personally?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. See, this is so important because tons of studies have shown us that emotional health and stress either damage or boost our immune system and our ability to fight infection. So anxiety and stress ultimately are rooted in interpreting events as dangerous, right? So it all starts with being aware of the negative patterns of thoughts, emotions, and resulting behaviors that are triggered by three main fears. So first, fear of uncertainty, right, which is a big part of what we're going through right now, which leads to control behavior and anger. So if we don't feel through and process that anger in a healthy way, it's going to turn into blame and aggression. I mean, examples are going to include unnecessary fights with your loved ones or blaming politicians on Facebook, right? The second fear is going to be disconnection, right? Which again, we're all experiencing, which leads to people-pleasing behavior and feelings of guilt. So if we don't process through that guilt with someone, it's going to turn into shame and low self-esteem. So that might show up like as exhausting yourself with trying to homeschool your children out of fear that you're going to be judged or your kids won't be successful. And the third is going to be fear of change, again, which we're all going through right now, which leads to avoidance behavior and sadness. If we don't feel through and release that sadness, it's going to become despair. And that might show up as like retreating into our phones or at its worst, depression, right? But if we can feel through these emotions, which again, most of us weren't necessarily taught how to do, which is where a therapist like me can be helpful, then we can shift our patterns with tangible things you can do today, right now. Like first, a movement practice. So 10 to 15 minutes at least of walking, biking, or yoga. Those are great ways of doing it while we're stuck at home, right? The second is going to be some kind of stillness practice. So like 10 to 15 minutes of prayer, meditation, contemplation, or just breathing, just sitting in silence. The third is going to be a creative practice, right? So doing some art, a home project, a work project, or some kind of hobby, making something, right? Fourth is going to be connection with someone, reaching out, I say to one person outside the home every other day and sharing kindness and love, right? We're all in this together. We can connect through that. The fifth is going to be a gratitude practice. So starting the day, thinking of or ideally writing down 3 to 5 things you can be grateful for, or sharing them together at dinner as a family, right? It can even be simple things like having a house, having enough food. Right now, that's something to be really grateful for. And then finally, number 6 is self-soothing skills using the 5 senses. So anything that's kind of sensory and positive, so that could be using cold temperature to calm you down, calming music, art you like to look at, scents that smell good, essential oils, bonding with your pets, going out in nature. These 6 simple things can make a huge change for us emotionally.
And Matt, what's great about that is that these are all things that we can control. We're talking about being in a situation where we're not in control of some bigger things, but these are areas where we can control. And I think that's very key. We can make the decision to handle it in these ways with the strategies you projected. And the next thing I wanted to ask you is, right now, a lot of us are at home and we get sucked into watching the news and following stuff on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And you shared with a group of chamber people recently about the value of limiting your exposure to that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, Dan, that's the bottom line. Right now, too much news, too much social media are going to cause way too much stress and anxiety because there's nothing we can do with it. We're just consuming it without anywhere to go. Stress occurs when there's too much information coming in and not enough time to process through it, which damages physically, chemically, our brains and bodies. So best thing you can do, reduce your screen time, reduce your news time, and increase your time to decompress, connect, and do something meaningful to make a contribution, Okay, so if there's some negative news, what can you do about it instead of just getting stuck ruminating, right? This is a time where we all have a forced opportunity to take a step back, heal, and make positive changes in our life. If the anxiety comes up, it's like a warning light on your car letting you know something's wrong with the engine. And it can be a time to go inward and begin that healing journey.
Matt, this is great advice. Thank you for taking some time to share it with us. We appreciate everybody in the audience today watching this latest episode of CityScape. We'll see you around next time.